My name is Maria Parrini. I have a master's degree and I'm currently working on DMA. I'm in my first year.
Well, welcome and congratulations. You've got a big concert coming up in a little bit, right? The concerto competition.
Yes.
So tell me a bit, what are you going to be playing for it?
I'll be playing Beethoven's Fourth Piano Concerto in G major.
Cool. And I assume you picked that, right?
Yes, it is a piece I grew up listening to quite a lot. And when I suggested that I work on it with my professor, he was very eager because it is one of his favorite pieces as well. And he was in the middle of putting together all 5 Beethoven concertos. So it was nicely timed.
Yeah, that's right. So he last October, was it? He played all 5 in 2 nights.
Yes.
in a 24-hour period or a 26-hour period, right?
Yes.
He played all 5 of them. So so what do you think spoke to you about this piece? How old were you when you first heard it?
Maybe 9 or 10.
Okay.
My parents are pianists, so we had a lot of CDs floating around our cars of various pianists, and we had Martha Argerich and Leon Fleischer and Maurizio Pollini sort of floating around everywhere, and I would pick one before going into the car to go to school every day. So I think the Leon Fleischer recording of that stuck around in my dad's Honda Civic for a couple of months. Yeah.
Yeah. So how has your understanding of that piece changed from being 10 and how did you interpret it as a 10-year-old? Do you remember?
Gosh, that's a good question.
Did you think of it as a story? I have a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And she'll listen to music and it'll be like a soundtrack to a story she's trying to tell.
I think, sometimes some pieces would present themselves that way for me, in kind of a narrative. I don't think that this one did. And I remember that I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was very regal, I think is the word that I would have used. And it has softer edges than the other concerti. It is not as bombastic, and it's the first concerto in the piano repertoire, I think, to begin with the piano. So
okay.
that was something that my parents pointed out to me actually when I was young. But I always liked the temperament of it because it kind of keeps chugging along it has a lot of different moments of energy and sparkle and subduedness throughout. But it always sort of presented to me like a train ride, where you're sitting and you're watching this beautiful scenery come by at sort of a consistent rate. So I always really liked that about this piece, and a lot of Beethoven and Schubert too kind of presented itself like that, where you're just sort of sitting back and letting it happen to you.
Taking it all in.
Yeah.
So how has it been going, learning the piece?
It's been fabulous. It was, I learned it last semester for the competition, and I was able to really focus on it for a couple of months with Professor Nell, and I think just because we both have a very sincere love for the piece, it was really easy for us to work on it. And it's interesting always to bring the piece back because you find that problems have solved themselves sort of in that space of being away from the piece for a little while. Things become a little clearer, and all of your ideas that didn't quite hold water, will sort of, it's clearer what works and what doesn't. Yeah.
So when did you audition for it?
That was in November.
Okay, and then after that, did you pretty much just stop playing the piece altogether?
I work on it, every couple of practice sessions, I'm working on something from it, even if I'm focusing on other repertoire. But now it's sort of back at the front of focus.
Okay. And your parents are both pianists?
Yes.
What did they think of it when you got accepted?
Oh, well, they were so happy. They will be coming in to hear the performance.
Oh, nice.
I think just for a night, but yeah.
Okay. Where do they live?
In South Carolina.
Okay.
Greenville.
And what did they think of you choosing this piece? Did they help you pick the piece or?
Oh, my mom, every time we called for a couple of weeks, she'd be, are you still playing Beethoven 4? Are you still practicing Beethoven 4? That's my favorite piece. You need to learn Beethoven 4. Don't learn Beethoven 5. You need to learn Beethoven 4. So, they were very enthusiastic.
So it's your mom's favorite piece?
My mom has a lot of favorite pieces, as do I. But it's definitely in the top 5. I think she wouldn't mind me saying that. I don't know. They're always very supportive. They always have good commentary when they listen to me play. And so I always get interesting feedback from my parents, because it used to be that they would hear me practice all the time. And so if my mom's cooking dinner and I'm practicing, I would hear, nope, do it again from the next room over.
Play it slower.
Yeah, no, slow down. Hands separately. Yeah, it was that was my childhood. And now, there's more time in between the times that they hear me play. So the commentary that I get is very interesting, and it's always very, very apt. It's always something that I'm like, oh yeah, that is where I am right now as a pianist. So
did they teach you growing up?
They did.
Oh, okay. Did they teach you like all through high school?
Yes. I studied with my mom primarily as I was a beginner. She taught K-12 students out of our house. And then my dad teaches at a small university in upstate Greenville.
Okay.
So as my repertoire started progressing, I started to encroach upon some pieces that he had played. And so we started working together a little bit more towards the end of high school. But after a while, because of just the nature of the piano and them sort of being able to hear me play all the time, after a while, they left me kind of to my own devices, especially senior year. And they're like, okay, make this repertoire sound like what you want it to sound like, and we'll intervene if something is really, off the rails. But it was good because it let me develop a voice. It was an interesting experience studying with your parents. I'm sure that the ages of 9 through 13 for my mom were not, easy for me to teach. Yeah.
So for undergrad, did you go to where your dad teaches?
No, I went to Cleveland Institute of Music for undergrad. And then I actually took what was going to be 2 years off and played chamber music on cruise ships.
Oh, wow.
I played for a program called Lincoln Center Stage, which was a brand partnership with Lincoln Center and Holland America Cruise Line.
Nice.
And what they had us do was rehearse in New York for about 2 weeks and put together 12 concert programs, which were each about 45 minutes. All of them were different repertoire. About half of them were standard classical, Schumann, Shostakovich, Brahms. Did a transcription of Bach, Brandenburg 5. And then the other half of it was crossover repertoire, kind of from various styles. So we played some songs by Alicia Keys, and we played sort of an Annie Lennox mashup and some Billy Joel and some movie tunes. And, we had an arrangement of Good, the Bad, and the Ugly where we had to kind of holler out into the audience. So it was really fun music to play when the ship is rocking and your piano bench is like sliding away from you.
Yeah, that sounds amazing though. So what was that like, performing on a cruise ship?
It was fabulous. It was the perfect thing to do when you are freshly 21 and have been in a practice room for the past 18 years.
Yeah, at CIM, they're all in the basement.
Yes, they are.
Room, so
they are very much in the basement.
Yeah.
Yes.
So did you perform every night, or how often would you perform?
We would give 2 or 3 concerts a day, 6 nights a week.
Okay.
So sometimes it was 3 back-to-back, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, where we would have sort of a 15-minute break in between.
The same program, I assume?
We would do kind of like a sandwich. So if we were doing Brahms Quintet one day, we wouldn't play that twice. We would play that one in the middle at the 7 p.m. program. And then on the other half, we would do, maybe the movie music program, something a little bit lighter and, less pressure for us, I guess.
Yeah. Was it a good experience, though? You liked it?
Yeah, it was wonderful. I met a lot of wonderful musicians, chamber musicians from all over the world. Got to work with people from Poland and Turkey and Hungary and just all over the place. It was really fabulous, and got to see some places that I did not think the piano would take me to. So yeah, it was really exciting.
Yeah. So when did you know that like you were kind of are you done with it, or would you ever go back to that, or you feel like you're done?
Well, it's I think it's wonderful to know that if I ever experience a massive life upheaval, cruise ship work is there to catch me, because yes, I think it is certainly a place. You detach yourself a lot from what's going on land. You sort of, it's like an alternate reality. But I would say that right now I'm about to get married. I actually met my fiance, who's a cellist, in rehearsals for a contract which never happened because it was meant to leave February 2020.
Oh.
And we were actually going to
go to... Well, thank goodness you didn't leave and then be stranded somewhere.
Yes, because actually our ship, the one we were supposed to get on, was one of the first ones to get sort of stranded in the South China Sea, and they were trying to figure out if there was COVID on it or not. And I don't think there was. And then eventually, of course, there was COVID ever. So.
Yeah.
But it was... so that was an interruption. And then we ended up just... moving in together, and I started a master's in Georgia. I had a graduate assistantship there for a little bit, and that was a really fun time at the Schwob School of Music down at Columbus State, and completely different, sort of small town life.
Yeah, different from the cruise ship.
Yeah, I mean, there's one major downtown street, and if you can walk up and down in 30 minutes, so.
Much different than Cleveland, where like the art museum's across the street, and it's all right there. Yeah,
yeah. So it was nice to have that different pace, and I think Austin's a good mix of activity and solitude.
Yeah. What made you decide to come here to Butler?
Honestly, I had the most wonderful time auditioning here. I loved meeting Professor Nell. I think immediately we were getting along. We had a lesson together, and really, it was a lovely experience. I enjoyed talking with him about the music. I think we really bonded over just the other literature and not just piano, but when we talk about a composer, often in my lessons we'll talk about the repertoire that composer has written for harp or for flute or clarinet, and kind of open the discussion up to that. And I love listening and just sort of processing music history. So that's always a fun thing for me in my lessons. And one of my good friends, Michael Linehan, who I actually met first in Brevard Music Center in 2012, when I was, I think, 14.
Oh, wow.
He and I happened to be auditioning at the same time for DMA. And we ended up with the same teacher, the same teaching assistantship, the same office, and we teach at the same two studios when we're not teaching here. So,
wow, small world,
very small world. So it was really helpful to have a connection here. Have somebody around who could show me and sort of vouch for the school and say, no, I think you're going to have a good time here.
Yeah. So how are you and Professor Nell preparing for this concerto concert? Like, obviously, he's an expert with this piece, right? He's performed it before.
Most of our rehearsals or most of our lessons have been just a lot of playing, and we'll stop and we'll adjust something, and he'll give me a comment or an image or some sort of descriptive word. And I really like that aspect of it because he has very definite sounds in his head, like a certain timbre, a certain color that belongs in that place. And we tend to agree about those things. I think it's really nice, like having somebody who loves the piece and sort of feels that it's intrinsic to them a little bit. As a pianist, I feel that way too. And so we don't, I don't think there have been any instances in my lessons where he's said something and I've been like, I don't think I want to do that. It's mostly every time he suggests something, I'm like, yeah, of course that's how it should go.
Wow. So how do you practice a concerto? Do you have like a recording you play along to it, or do you just try not to focus on kind of your part?
Yeah, I will make sure that my time is organized very well throughout the piece. I think that's the first major component of ensemble playing, is just making sure that I've done all of my due diligence in that way, and that I know where my part aligns or elides or complements something else that's happening in the orchestral texture. That in that process of study, of like score study and noticing where your part interacts with the other components of the piece is really exciting to me. That sort of, because you can compare those interactions with anything else in the world. You know, you can draw comparisons to the way that people converse with each other, for example. And so some of the things that are brought up in my lesson kind of pertain to that. Like how do these two seemingly abstract things affect each other throughout the time of the piece? And that's a fun rabbit hole for me to go down. And fortunately, we have a teacher who will go down that rabbit hole with me.
Yeah, with the exception of your teacher, you probably know more about this piece than anyone in the audience. So what would you tell the audience? How would you describe this piece? What should they be listening for? What should they expect before coming to this concert?
I think that the idea of a piano concerto comes with a certain connotation of bombast and virtuosity that is replaced in this piece by gentleness. And there is something about the piece that makes me, and I cannot explain why, but it makes me think of nature, just like walking among trees and watching the light come through different shades of green.
So, would you call it a quiet piece?
At times, it starts quietly, which is unusual for a concerto. It also starts very, very simply. You know, most concerti that start with the piano after Beethoven, and even Beethoven's Fifth Concerto, he starts with something quite loud that's meant to get the audience, you know, their attention directed at the pianist immediately. And this piece, the challenge is that you have to present them with magic from the very first beat. And that is the hardest piece about, or the hardest thing about this piece is the first 5 measures.
Okay. How do you approach those first 5 measures? Is it just you playing the first 5 measures? Okay.
You overthink it for a couple of years, and then you sit back and let it happen.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and probably in 20 years, I will have a completely different answer to that question. But I think a lot of it just, for me, I have to think about my breath. I have to think about integrating things with my breath and my movement so that what is happening feels like part of a fluid, ongoing gesture, not just like a series of plans or like little procedures.
Yeah, so like, is there any other parts that like give you pause with this piece? Like, so there's those first 5 measures. Is there any other part in it that you've kind of struggled with or really had to overthink maybe?
Oh, I've overthought every measure in this piece. Well, I think one interesting part of this piece, and this is actually going back to what you were asking about what I would tell the audience about it. The first movement is quite long, and it's really a journey. If it's a walk in the woods, you get pretty far up the mountain. And then the second movement, by comparison, is unusually short. It is like 4 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
And there is a story. I can't cite my source here, but it's sort of a story that gets passed around from pianist to pianist, that supposedly it is a depiction of Orpheus pleading with the spirits of the underworld to return Eurydice, which I don't know. I imagine that that's something that the publisher might have fabricated to make the piece a little bit more glamorous for people.
It's a marketing play.
Yes,
possibly.
exactly. Yeah.
But it could be true.
Yeah, I mean, the same reason why the, Moonlight Sonata is named Moonlight and the Appassionata Sonata is named Appassionata. It's all...
That's all marketing?
Yeah, a lot of the time it's marketing coming from the publisher.
Okay.
Saying, this is what you can expect from this piece. It's very beautiful.
It worked.
You should buy it.
Yeah, and the Moonlight Sonata.
Oh, it totally works. Yeah. But for this piece, I think that image, whether it was Beethoven's or not, holds water. Because it begins in the second movement with an extremely strong statement from the orchestra. Right away, it's very arresting. And the piano stays soft the whole time. It's almost like suffocating a little bit. And there's a small moment where the piano gets to kind of say its piece, and then it backs away again. It's completely different from anything else in the concerto repertoire.
Is that only that second movement that happens?
That
where you're like almost playing backseat to the orchestra.
Yeah, it's really the way that those forces interact in the second movement is that the orchestra comes in very strong, the piano is always quiet, and gradually the orchestra descends to the dynamic of the piano.
Oh, okay.
And so you can imagine, if you're going to stick with that story, that Orpheus is giving a bit of a compelling argument, and they're, kind of turning an ear to him for a bit. And then maybe you can hear the moment of loss. I don't know. There's some tragic sounding chromatic scales that I think are very impassioned, but
sounds like an interesting 4 minutes.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear it.
I don't read that far into it as far as the story, but it is useful to have those references in your head or those associations as I'm reaching for a sound.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so we can't wait to hear the concert. What do you have next going on? So what are your plans this summer, next year? Anything fun on the horizon?
Well, I am getting married in May.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I am excited.
Are you taking a cruise for a honeymoon?
Absolutely not. No, I think we have seen enough of the inside of the ship. We were always talking about, okay, we need to go places that are
away
mountainous.
From water.
And I love water, but we need to go places that we could have never reached by the ship. But we are going to, I think, somewhere in the Caribbean.
Okay. Oh, that's close to water.
Yeah,
you'll see the cruise ships coming in and out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll be nice and far away.
Okay. Cool. Well, congrats. And then how many more years do you have of your DMA?
I have 2 years
okay.
After this one, and we will see what happens after that. I am actually planning some concerts with my brother, who's a violinist who lives in New York. And he's had some success there. He's just joined a string quartet. So it's been exciting to see him advance there. And we usually come back to our hometown in South Carolina and play some concerts every couple of years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, and we can't wait for the concerts. We're about a month out, so it's exciting. So yeah, we look forward to it. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much.